Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be diving into the Millionaire Next Door.
Okay.
And this book kind of flips the script on what we think we know about millionaires, right?
Yeah.
You know, big houses, fancy cars, designer clothes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we see in the movies, right?
Right. But this book, it argues that that's not the reality for most millionaires in America. Instead, it dives into the mindsets and the habits that actually build lasting wealth. Think, sensible spending,
Right.
disciplined investing, maybe even, driving a Ford instead of a Ferrari. So I'm excited to really dig into this with you.
Yeah, it's a fascinating book that really challenges those preconceived notions we have about wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So before we dive into the specifics, let's start with a little thought experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear the word millionaire, what's the first image that pops into your head?
I think for a lot of people, it's that flashy lifestyle, right? The mansions, the yachts, the private jets.
Right, exactly. But the Millionaire Next Door paints a much different picture.
Mm.
It argues that the typical millionaire is more likely to be your neighbor, the owner of a local business, or even, the person standing behind you in line at the grocery store.
Yeah, they blend in rather than stand out. They're not necessarily the ones flashing designer labels or driving luxury cars.
And that's what's so intriguing about this book.
Mm-hmm.
It challenges those stereotypes. I mean, think about it. The book mentions that 90% of millionaires who own homes under $300,000 are extremely satisfied with life.
Yeah, and even more surprising, the data shows that the median home value for someone who died with an estate worth over $3.5 million was just $469,000.
Wow. That definitely makes you rethink the bigger is always better mentality.
Absolutely. And it suggests that maybe we're all chasing the wrong things. Maybe it's not about keeping up with the Joneses, but about focusing on long-term financial security and making choices that align with your values.
That's such a powerful message. It seems like this book is really about understanding the millionaire mindset and how it differs from what we might assume.
Exactly. It argues that it's not about luck or being born into wealth. It's about cultivating specific habits and principles that lead to financial success.
So let's dive into those principles.
Mm.
What are some of the key things that set millionaires apart?
One of the most important principles is living well below your means. Now, this doesn't mean depriving yourself or living a life of scarcity.
Right.
It's about being conscious of your spending and resisting that urge to inflate your lifestyle as your income grows. The book talks about a couple, Mrs. T and her husband, who are financially independent but still choose to live a modest lifestyle. They value their financial security over flashy spending.
I think that's so important, that idea of resisting lifestyle inflation. It's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking you deserve to treat yourself when you start earning more.
Oh, absolutely.
But that can really sabotage your long-term wealth-building goals.
It can. And that leads us to another key principle, financial discipline. Millionaires are meticulous budgeters and planners. They're really good at tracking their expenses and being incredibly disciplined about saving and investing a significant portion of their income.
So it's not about hitting the lottery or getting rich quick, but about consistent effort in developing those smart financial habits.
Exactly. And the book even mentions a 15% method for building wealth.
Okay, the 15% method. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. It suggests that you should be setting aside at least 15% of your pre-tax income for investments each year. Think of it like paying yourself first, even before you think about spending.
I like that. That 15% is dedicated to building your future wealth. Now, the book also talks about these two contrasting personas, the PAWs and the UAWs, or prodigious accumulators of wealth and under-accumulators of wealth.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at how people approach building wealth, right?
Right. So who are these PAWs? What makes them so good at building wealth?
Well, PAWs are the folks who consistently build a net worth that far exceeds their income and age bracket. They're really the masters of financial discipline, frugality, and they're meticulous planners. They understand that building wealth is a long game and are in it for the long haul.
And they're willing to make those sacrifices along the way.
Absolutely.
Now, what about the UAWs? What are they doing differently?
UAWs, even if they have high incomes, they tend to struggle with accumulating wealth. They often fall prey to lifestyle inflation, prioritize spending over saving, and may not have that solid long-term investment strategy.
So it's not just about how much you earn, but how you manage it.
Right. It's about being intentional with your finances, regardless of your income.
Now, I think one of the most surprising parts of the book is the discussion of economic outpatient care, or EOC. What exactly is EOC, and how does it affect wealth building?
EOC refers to that, substantial financial support that some parents give their adult children. It could be anything from regular allowances to help with a down payment on a house. And while this obviously comes from a place of love and a desire to help,
Right.
the book suggests that EOC can actually have some unintended negative consequences when it comes to building wealth.
So are you saying that receiving financial help from your parents could actually hinder your long-term financial success? That seems a little counterintuitive.
Yeah, it can, and there are a couple of reasons for this. First, EOC can create a sense of dependence. It can make it harder for those adult children to develop the financial independence and self-sufficiency they need to truly build lasting wealth.
They may not be as motivated to learn those essential skills.
Right, they haven't had to. And second, research shows that folks who receive significant financial gifts from their parents often end up with less wealth than those who don't, even if they have similar incomes. This is because they tend to spend more than they save and invest.
It's like they're living beyond their means, but those means are being supplemented by their parents' generosity. The book uses some compelling examples to illustrate this, right?
Yes. There's Mary and Lamar, who rely heavily on gifts from Mary's mom to keep up their lifestyle. And then there's Mrs. BPF, whose parents' efforts to create this ideal entrepreneurial environment actually ended up stunting her growth and making her more dependent on them.
It's really interesting to see how good intentions can sometimes lead to unintended consequences. And it highlights the importance of open communication and really thinking about the long-term implications of financial support, both for the giver and the receiver.
Definitely. It's a complex issue. Now, let's talk about a concept that might seem a little bit counterintuitive at first. The book argues that building wealth often requires courage. What's the connection there?
I'm curious about that too. What do you mean by courage in this context?
Well, building wealth often requires you to step outside of that norm, challenge the conventional wisdom, and make decisions that maybe other people don't quite understand or agree with. It takes courage to embrace being uncomfortable and taking calculated risks to achieve your financial goals.
So you're saying that it takes guts to be a paw.
Yeah, in a way. It takes guts to say no to all those tempting things, the gadgets, the vacations.
That pressure to keep up.
Exactly. And it takes guts to invest your money for the long term, even when the market is a little bit unpredictable or, there's some uncertainty.
Right.
It also takes guts to pursue your own vision of success, even if it means going against the grain. The book tells a story about a millionaire who actually used his dog to outsmart some status-obsessed condo owners who were trying to impose all these restrictions on him.
Okay.
It's a great example of someone who used his creativity and a little bit of courage to stand up for himself.
I love that. It shows that building wealth isn't just about, crunching numbers. It's also about resourcefulness, creative thinking, and, yeah, even a little bit of guts.
Exactly. And then there's the story of Laura, who, after a difficult divorce, decided she didn't want to rely on her wealthy family. Instead, she built a successful real estate business all on her own.
That's inspiring. It really highlights the resilience and courage it often takes to overcome those setbacks and create your own path to financial independence.
Absolutely. And it shows that building wealth isn't about taking the easy road. It's about being willing to push yourself, learn from your mistakes, and keep going, even when things get tough.
So it seems like one of the key takeaways here is that while we might have these preconceived notions about what it means to be a millionaire, the millionaire next door challenges those assumptions and suggests that it's more about mindset, habits, and even courage than it is about, luck or inheritance.
I agree. It's about making conscious choices, developing those healthy financial habits, and really understanding the power of long-term thinking and financial discipline.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It reinforces the idea that true wealth is about so much more than just the stuff you own. It's about that inner security and financial freedom, not about trying to project a certain image.
Right. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of defying expectations, the book has some interesting insights into how millionaires spend their money, even on big-ticket items like cars. I mean, are those driveways really filled with luxury cars like we might imagine?
You might be surprised to hear this, but the research actually found that millionaires aren't as car crazy as we might think. They really prioritize value, practicality, and that long-term thinking, even when it comes to their vehicles.
Okay, so they're not necessarily driving around in the latest sports cars or luxury SUVs.
Not at all. The book says that the average millionaire drives a car that's a few years old and that they got for a pretty reasonable price. In fact, more than half of the millionaires they surveyed had never spent more than $30,000 on a car. And get this, a lot of them actually drove used vehicles.
Wow, that's way less than what a lot of people spend on cars these days.
It is, and it really points to a difference in mindset. Millionaires tend to see cars as a depreciating asset, something that loses value over time,
Oh.
while other folks might see them more as a status symbol.
So they're not getting caught up in that cycle of always having to have the newest model. They're thinking more about the long-term financial impact of their choices.
Exactly. They're recognizing that, cars lose value really quickly and that it makes more financial sense to invest that money elsewhere.
Okay, so they're being smart with their car purchases. What about other areas of spending, like budgeting and planning, for example? Are millionaires naturally gifted budgeters, or is it something they've learned to do over time?
Well, the book suggests that most millionaires are actually really meticulous planners and budgeters. They're not just winging it. They've developed systems and habits that help them manage their money well. They track their expenses, create budgets, and make those conscious choices about where their money's going.
So it's not about being cheap, but about being intentional with your spending.
Right. And there's a great example in the book where they compare the spending habits of Mrs. Rule, a millionaire, with this high-income couple, Robert and Judy.
Yeah.
Mrs. Rule consistently builds wealth, even though her income isn't always steady. But she's disciplined, she plans carefully.
Right.
Robert and Judy, on the other hand, they have a great income, but they don't really have a budget, and they tend to spend more than they save.
So they're making those classic UAW mistakes.
Yeah.
They might be earning a lot, but they're not necessarily building wealth.
Exactly. And the book even suggests that maybe Robert and Judy could benefit from talking to a financial advisor, someone to help them get organized and create a solid budget.
That's a great reminder that seeking out professional advice can be a really smart move, especially if you're feeling lost or overwhelmed with your finances.
It can make a big difference.
Now, let's talk about investing. Millionaires obviously have some secrets when it comes to building wealth through investments, right? I mean, is there like a magic formula they're using?
I wish there was a magic formula I could share, but unfortunately there's not. But what the book does suggest is that millionaires often take a really disciplined and long-term approach to investing.
Okay.
They're not into those get-rich-quick schemes or chasing the latest investment fads. They're focused on that slow and steady growth over time.
So they're more like marathon runners than sprinters.
Yeah, exactly. They're in it for the long haul, and they understand that building wealth takes time and patience, and they're not afraid of riding out those ups and downs in the market. They also get the importance of diversification, spreading their investments across different things like stocks, bonds, maybe real estate.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. It's all about managing risk.
Speaking of investments, the book highlights real estate as being a really powerful tool for building wealth. So it's not just about buying a fancy house to live in.
No, definitely not. Millionaires often look at real estate as a really tangible asset, something that can bring in income and go up in value over time. They might invest in rental properties or commercial real estate or even, develop land.
So it's like building a portfolio of properties that can create that passive income stream and appreciate in value.
Exactly. And they're often smart about using things like mortgages to leverage their investments.
Leverage. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Leverage basically means using borrowed money, like from a bank, to boost your buying power and potentially make your money grow faster.
Okay.
For example, if you're buying a rental property and you get a mortgage, you're using the bank's money to buy an asset that's going to generate income for you.
So you're making your money work harder.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that leverage can be risky too.
Right.
If you're not careful, you could end up losing more than you gain.
So it's important to be strategic and to understand the risks before jumping into anything too quickly. Now, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about something that I think a lot of people, especially those with kids, can relate to. The challenge of raising children who have different financial values than you do.
Oh, I can imagine that can be tricky, especially when you want the best for your kids, but you also have to respect their choices.
Exactly. So does the book offer any advice for parents who are trying to instill good financial habits in their children, even if their kids don't necessarily share those same values?
It does. It suggests that the best approach is to be a good role model. Show your kids what good financial habits look like in action.
So walk the walk, don't just talk the talk.
Yeah, exactly. offer guidance and support, but also respect their choices and let them make their own mistakes.
Give them that space to learn and grow.
Exactly. The book also stresses the importance of setting clear boundaries when it comes to money, communicating your expectations
Right.
and letting your kids know that you're there to support them, even if they mess up sometimes.
It's about finding that balance between guidance and independence.
Exactly. Now, let's move on to another crucial aspect of wealth building,
Ah,
planning for the future, especially through estate planning. It's not the most fun topic to think about, but it's important, right?
absolutely. It's about ensuring that your wealth is taken care of and distributed according to your wishes, even after you're gone.
Right. And the book emphasizes having things like a will, setting up trusts, and making sure you have beneficiaries for your assets.
It's about protecting your legacy and giving yourself peace of mind.
Exactly. It's about taking control and being prepared. Now, we've been focusing a lot on strategies for building wealth, but the book also recognizes that life throws curveballs.
Right.
Unexpected things happen, setbacks can happen, even to millionaires. So, how to deal with those financial challenges when they come up?
That's a great question. Do they have some secret formula for bouncing back from setbacks?
Well, the book suggests that millionaires are often incredibly resilient and adaptable when things go wrong financially. They might not be immune to those challenges, but they've built up the skills and the mindset to bounce back, often even stronger than before.
So they don't let those setbacks define them.
No, they don't. They're willing to adjust their plans, make sacrifices if they have to, and find creative solutions.
So it's about having that growth mindset, that willingness to learn and adapt, even when it comes to money.
Exactly. And the book also highlights how millionaires often view those setbacks as opportunities for growth and learning. It's not about being perfect, it's about learning from your mistakes and moving forward.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about something that's often associated with wealth.
Hmm.
Giving back to others. Does the book suggest that millionaires are more philanthropic than the average person?
Yeah, it does. The book says that a lot of millionaires, especially those who built their wealth themselves, have a strong sense of gratitude and a desire to give back to their communities.
So they want to use their wealth to make a positive impact.
Exactly. They might support charities or causes that are important to them, either financially or by volunteering their time and skills.
It's about recognizing that with wealth comes responsibility.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful thing to see. The book encourages everyone to think about their own philanthropic goals and how they can contribute to making the world a better place.
That's a great message. Now, let's dive into a topic that's often linked to wealth, entrepreneurship. Does the book have any insights into what sets successful entrepreneurs apart from the rest?
It does. It highlights that a lot of millionaires are entrepreneurs who built their wealth through hard work, innovative thinking, and willingness to take calculated risks.
So they're not afraid to step outside of their comfort zone and chase their dreams.
Absolutely. They're often really passionate about their businesses. They want to create something of value. And the book suggests that many successful entrepreneurs have these common traits like resilience, adaptability, being able to solve problems, and just having a really strong work ethic.
They're like the pioneers of the business world.
I like that. Yeah, they're not afraid to push boundaries or challenge the status quo. But the book also recognizes that not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
So it also explores other paths to wealth, like, for example, being a successful professional, like a doctor, lawyer, or accountant. These folks often have high incomes and are really good at saving and investing wisely over time.
So it's about building a successful career in your field and making smart financial decisions along the way.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that professionals who are dedicated to their work, always learning and improving and building strong relationships with their clients or patients, are the ones who are more likely to find financial success. It's about dedication and having that long-term vision.
Now, let's talk about a topic that can be sensitive and sometimes even a little bit challenging. How millionaires approach family dynamics and passing on their wealth to future generations.
That's a big one, and it can definitely be tricky. The book talks about how many millionaires prioritize those family relationships and want to instill strong values in their kids, things like hard work, responsibility, and finding your purpose.
Right, it's about more than just money.
Exactly. And they often involve their kids in their businesses or in their financial decisions, teaching them about money management from a young age.
So it's about passing down that knowledge and those values along with the wealth.
Absolutely. It's about creating a legacy. And the book suggests that a lot of millionaires see their wealth as a way to support their families, give their kids opportunities, and leave a positive impact on the world.
It's a beautiful way to look at wealth, not just as something you accumulate, but as something you use to make a difference.
I agree. It's about creating a ripple effect of positivity. Now, the book also dives into the unique challenges that wealthy families often face.
Okay.
Things like dealing with family businesses, managing expectations around money, and preventing conflicts between heirs.
Right. Those can be tough situations.
They can. And the book stresses the importance of open communication, having those boundaries, and making sure things are fair and transparent when it comes to money. It's about having those sometimes difficult conversations.
And sometimes getting outside help can be beneficial too, right?
Definitely. The book says that financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, and even family therapists can be invaluable resources for wealthy families.
It's about recognizing that money can sometimes complicate things in families and being proactive about getting support when you need it.
Absolutely. Now, let's revisit a concept we touched on earlier, economic outpatient care, or EOC. The book really digs into the implications of those financial gifts that parents give to their adult children and how they can affect family dynamics and wealth building.
Right, we talked about how EOC can sometimes have those unintended negative consequences.
It's true. Even though it comes from a loving place, it can create this cycle of dependence that can actually hinder those kids from becoming financially independent.
So it's a delicate balance.
It is. The book points out that EOC can sometimes make those kids feel entitled and lead them to overspend, making financial decisions they wouldn't make if they were relying solely on their own income. It's almost like they're living in a bit of a bubble.
Yeah, a bubble that could burst if that support ever goes away.
Exactly. And the book suggests that this disconnect between how wealthy they feel and their actual financial situation can set them up for some real problems down the line.
It's a good reminder that true financial independence comes from earning your own way and being responsible with your money, no matter what your family's financial background is.
Absolutely. And the book uses the example of Mary and Lamar again to really drive this point home.
Mhm.
They're still relying on those regular gifts from Mary's mom to keep up their lifestyle.
And without that support, they'd be in trouble.
Exactly. And the book argues that this dependence is preventing them from developing the financial skills and independence they need to truly build wealth.
It's a great illustration of how good intentions can sometimes backfire, even when it comes to money.
It is, and the book really encourages parents to think about the long-term implications of those gifts and find ways to support their kids' financial independence instead of fostering that dependence. It's about giving them the tools and the confidence they need to manage their own finances and build their own success.
So it's about empowering them to create their own financial future.
Exactly. Now, let's dig into the psychological aspect of this a little bit. The book talks about how receiving those regular financial gifts can actually distort people's perception of their own wealth. How does that work?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, if you're getting regular help from your parents, wouldn't you be more aware of your financial limitations?
You would think so, but the book suggests that sometimes it actually works the opposite way. People who are getting those regular gifts might start to see their parents' wealth as an extension of their own.
Okay.
And that can lead them to overspend and make decisions that they couldn't sustain without that continued support.
So it's like they're living in this fantasy world where money is always available, even if it's not really theirs.
Exactly. And that disconnect between perception and reality can be really dangerous when it comes to building genuine financial security.
It's like a house built on sand. It's not going to last.
That's a great analogy. And the book emphasizes that true wealth is about much more than just having access to money. It's about having the skills and the mindset to manage your finances effectively, no matter what your family situation is.
So it's about taking ownership and being responsible.
Exactly. And it might even mean having some tough conversations with loved ones to set those boundaries and break free from that cycle of dependence.
So those are some really important lessons to remember. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's shift gears a bit and talk about credit cards. What do the millionaire next door have to say about credit cards and how they factor into wealth building?
You might be surprised to hear that millionaires often have different credit card habits than the average person.
Okay, how so?
Well, they're not necessarily afraid of using credit, but they tend to be a lot more disciplined and strategic about it.
So they're not just racking up debt on impulse purchases.
Right. They're more likely to use cards that offer rewards or cash back, and they're really good about paying their balances off in full every month to avoid those high interest charges.
So they're using credit cards as a tool, not letting those cards control them.
Exactly. They understand that credit cards can be really helpful for managing your finances when you use them wisely and responsibly.
It's all about being in control.
Absolutely. And the book emphasizes that building good credit can open doors to opportunities, especially if you want to invest in real estate or start a business.
So even though we've been talking a lot about financial discipline, it's not about being afraid of credit or avoiding it altogether. It's about understanding how it works and using it to your advantage.
Exactly. And it all comes back to that core message of being intentional and making informed decisions with your money.
Now, speaking of being intentional, the book also stresses the importance of goal setting, right? How does setting goals factor into the millionaire mindset?
Goal setting is super important. Millionaires are often very goal-oriented people. They have a vision for their financial future.
They're not just wandering through life hoping for the best.
Right. They set both those short-term and long-term goals and then actually create plans to achieve them.
So it's about having that roadmap to guide your financial journey.
Exactly. And the book says that setting those financial goals can be super motivating.
Right, it gives you something concrete to work towards.
It does, and it can help you stay focused on what's really important to you. The book even recommends setting SMART goals.
SMART goals, I've heard of those. Can you remind us what that means?
Sure. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Basically, it's about setting goals that are well-defined and that you can actually take action on.
Oh.
So instead of just saying, I want to save more money, a SMART goal would be something like, I'm going to save $500 per month for the next year to build my emergency fund.
That makes so much sense. It's about being specific and having a timeline.
Exactly. It gives you something to measure your progress against.
Yeah.
And it makes those goals feel more tangible and achievable.
Now, let's dive into investing a little bit more. Do millionaires have some secret insider knowledge when it comes to picking investments? Is there like a magic formula they're using?
I wish there was a magic formula, but unfortunately there's not. But what the book suggests is that millionaires often take a very disciplined and long-term approach to investing. They're not chasing those get-rich-quick schemes or jumping on the latest investment fads. They're focused on that slow and steady growth over time.
So they're in it for the long haul.
Exactly. And they understand that building wealth takes time and patience. They're not afraid to ride out those ups and downs in the market, and they really get the importance of diversification, spreading their investments across different things like stocks, bonds, real estate.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right. It's all about managing risk.
Now, we've talked a lot about how important it is to minimize your realized income and maximize your unrealized income. Can you remind us what that means and why it's so crucial for building wealth?
Absolutely. It all comes down to being smart about your taxes. Realized income is the money you earn that you have to pay taxes on, like your salary or if you sell an investment and make a profit. Unrealized income is the increase in value of your investments before you sell them. And the key here is you don't pay taxes on that unrealized income until you actually sell the investment and realize that gain.
So it's like letting your money grow tax-free until you decide to cash in.
Exactly. And this is a strategy that a lot of wealthy people use. They focus on growing their money through investments that appreciate over time, rather than just trying to earn a really high income from their jobs.
It's about being strategic and playing the long game when it comes to taxes.
Absolutely. And the book really emphasizes that minimizing your realized income can free up a lot more money to invest, which can really boost your wealth building over time.
It's like giving your investments a head start. Now, let's talk about something that's a little bit off topic, but super interesting. The book touches on the relationship between wealth and longevity. Does having money actually help you live longer?
Well, the book doesn't make any bold claims about wealth extending your lifespan, but it does mention an interesting finding from a study done by the IRS.
The IRS. Okay, I'm intrigued. What did they find?
So they were looking at estate tax returns of people who were, quite wealthy, and they compared those returns to their income tax returns from previous years. Basically, they were trying to see if there was a connection between the income people were reporting and their actual net worth.
So you were trying to get a glimpse behind the scenes, seeing if people were accumulating more wealth than they were reporting as income.
Exactly. And one of the key findings was that a lot of wealthy people, especially business owners, tend to structure their finances in a way that minimizes their taxable income.
So they're not trying to evade taxes, they're just being strategic about managing their money.
Exactly. And it led those IRS researchers to come up with this interesting phrase, BR, which stands for before the reaper.
Before the reaper. That sounds a little dramatic.
It does sound dramatic, but it's basically just referring to the tendency of some wealthy individuals to try to reduce their taxable net worth before they pass away.
Okay, so it's about making sure that more of their wealth goes to their heirs or chosen beneficiaries instead of to the government and taxes.
Exactly. They might do this by gifting assets to their kids, donating to charity, or investing in ways that minimize their realized income.
So it's a reminder that estate planning is really important and that you should seek professional advice to make sure your wealth is handled according to your wishes.
Absolutely. It's about being proactive and making sure your legacy is protected.
Now let's switch gears back to the idea of getting financial advice. Do millionaires rely heavily on financial advisors, or do they tend to go it alone?
The book suggests that many millionaires are actually more likely to get advice from people they trust within their personal network rather than just relying on those professional financial advisors.
So they're turning to people they know and respect, like their accountants, lawyers, or maybe even other successful business people.
Exactly. And the book even tells the story of Mr. Martin, who's a really successful businessman. He has a pretty unique way of deciding if he wants to work with a financial advisor.
Okay, I'm curious. Tell me more.
He asks those potential advisors to show him their personal income tax returns and investment portfolios.
Wow, that's pretty bold.
It is, but his reasoning is pretty simple. If those advisors aren't making more money than he is from their own investments, he figures he doesn't need their advice.
He wants to see proof that they can actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. He's all about putting his money where his mouth is.
So the takeaway here isn't necessarily that we should all start demanding to see our financial advisor's tax returns right.
Right. It's more about being really careful and discerning when you're choosing who to get financial advice from.
So it's about finding someone you trust, someone who has a track record of success and who really understands your goals.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about another key principle from the book. Prioritizing financial independence over displaying high social status. What does that actually look like in everyday life?
It's about focusing on building real wealth and security instead of trying to impress other people with fancy things or expensive lifestyles.
So it's about substance over style, living a life that's true to your values instead of trying to keep up with everyone else.
Exactly. And the book tells the story of Mr. W. W. Allen, who's a great example of this. He's a self-made multimillionaire, but he's lived in the same modest home for years, drives regular cars, and doesn't feel the need to show off his wealth.
He sounds like the true definition of a millionaire next door, someone who's comfortable with who they are and not trying to impress anyone.
Exactly. He's a perfect example of someone who prioritizes that long-term security over those flashy status symbols.
So he's not trying to prove anything to anyone. He's just focused on living a good life and managing his money wisely.
Right. He built his wealth through hard work, saving, and smart investments, not by trying to keep up with the Joneses.
It's a good reminder that true wealth is about inner security and freedom, not about showing off.
I agree. And the book contrasts those two mindsets, the people who are driven by financial independence versus those who are more focused on displaying their wealth.
And it suggests that those who prioritize financial independence are usually the ones who find lasting wealth and happiness.
Exactly. It comes back to that idea of living a life that's true to your values and pursuing goals that are meaningful to you.
Now, the book tells a funny story about Mr. Allen. What was his reaction when some business associates tried to give him a luxury car as a birthday gift?
Oh, yeah. He actually politely declined the gift. He said it just didn't fit with his lifestyle or his values. He was happy with the cars he already had and didn't see the need to upgrade just to impress other people.
That's a great example of staying true to yourself, even when other people might not understand.
It is. It shows that he's got that strong sense of self and isn't swayed by those external pressures.
Now, speaking of defying expectations, the book has some really interesting insights into how millionaires spend their money, even on things like cars.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty surprising.
Yeah. I mean, are their garages really filled with those luxury sports cars like we often see in movies?
You might be surprised to hear this, but the research actually shows that millionaires aren't as obsessed with cars as we might think. They tend to prioritize value and practicality over those flashy brands.
So they're not running out to buy the latest model every year.
Nope. The book says that the typical millionaire drives a car that's a few years old, and they paid a reasonable price for it. More than half of the millionaires surveyed had never spent more than $30,000 on a car, and a lot of them actually drove used vehicles.
That's amazing. It really challenges those stereotypes, doesn't it?
It does, and it highlights that different way of thinking. Millionaires often see those cars as a depreciating asset, something that loses value over time, while other people might see them more as a status symbol.
So they're not falling into that trap of constantly upgrading to the newest, shiniest thing.
Exactly. They understand that cars lose value quickly, and they'd rather invest their money in something that will grow.
It's about being financially savvy and making those long-term decisions.
Exactly.
Now, let's dive into a topic that I think a lot of people struggle with, budgeting and planning. The book talks about how millionaires approach these crucial aspects of personal finance. Are they just naturally gifted at budgeting? Or is it something that they've had to learn and develop over time?
Well, the book suggests that millionaires are often incredibly organized and meticulous when it comes to their finances. It's not just luck. They've created systems and habits that help them manage their money effectively. They're good at tracking their expenses, creating budgets, and making conscious choices about where their money goes.
So it's about being intentional and having a plan.
Exactly. And the book gives a great example of this by comparing the spending habits of Mrs. Rule, a millionaire, with Robert and Judy, a couple with a high income.
Okay.
So Mrs. Rule consistently builds wealth even though her income might fluctuate. She's disciplined and careful with her planning.
Right.
But Robert and Judy, they have a great income, but they struggle to save because they don't really have a budget, and they tend to prioritize spending over saving.
So they're making those classic mistakes that can prevent you from building wealth, even if you're earning a good income.
Exactly. And the book even suggests that maybe Robert and Judy could really benefit from working with a financial advisor, someone who can help them get organized and create a budget that actually works for them.
That's a great reminder that getting help from a professional can be really valuable, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed or like you're not making progress.
It can make a huge difference. Now, I want to touch on something that's often associated with wealth: philanthropy. Does the book suggest that millionaires are more likely to give back to their communities than the average person? It does. The book says that many millionaires, especially those who built their wealth themselves, tend to have a strong sense of gratitude and a desire to make a positive impact on the world.
So they want to use their wealth to give back.
Exactly. They might support charities or causes that are meaningful to them, either financially or by volunteering their time and skills.
It's about recognizing that having wealth comes with a responsibility to do good in the world.
Absolutely. And it's really inspiring to see people using their wealth to make a difference. The book encourages everyone to think about their own philanthropic goals, no matter how much money they have, and find ways to contribute to causes they care about.
That's a great message. Now, let's dive into a topic that's often linked to wealth: entrepreneurship. Does the book give us any insights into what makes successful entrepreneurs different?
It does. The book highlights that a lot of millionaires are entrepreneurs who built their wealth through hard work, innovative thinking, and a willingness to take calculated risks. They're often driven by a passion for their businesses and a desire to create something valuable.
So it's not just about making money, it's about making a difference and pursuing your passions.
Exactly. And the book suggests that many successful entrepreneurs have certain qualities in common, things like resilience, adaptability, being able to solve problems, and having a strong work ethic. They're not afraid to push the boundaries.
They're like the trailblazers of the business world.
That's a great way to put it. But the book also acknowledges that not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. So it explores other paths to wealth, like having a successful career as a doctor, lawyer, or accountant. These professionals often have high incomes and are really good at saving and investing wisely over time.
So it's about leveraging your skills and knowledge to build a solid career and making smart financial decisions along the way.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that those who are dedicated to their work, constantly learning and growing and building strong relationships with their clients, are the ones who are more likely to find financial success. It's about having a long-term vision and a commitment to excellence.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about family dynamics and how millionaires approach passing on their wealth to future generations. This can be a sensitive and complex issue.
It definitely can be. The book highlights how many millionaires really prioritize those family relationships and want to instill strong values in their kids.
Things like hard work, responsibility, and finding your purpose.
Exactly. And they often involve their children in their businesses or financial decisions, teaching them about money management from a young age.
So it's about more than just handing down money. It's about sharing knowledge and values.
Absolutely. It's about creating a legacy. And the book suggests that many millionaires see their wealth as a way to support their families, create opportunities for their kids, and have a positive impact on the world.
It's a beautiful perspective, seeing wealth as something that can be used for good and passed down for generations to come.
It really is. But the book also acknowledges that affluent families often face unique challenges.
Like what?
Well, things like navigating family businesses, managing expectations around money, and preventing conflicts between heirs. These can be really tough issues.
Right? And sometimes money can make those family dynamics even more complicated.
It can. And the book stresses the importance of open communication, setting clear boundaries, and making sure things are fair and transparent when it comes to money. It's about having those tough conversations and sometimes even seeking professional help from financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, or even family therapists. It can definitely be helpful. It's all about recognizing that wealth can add another layer of complexity to family relationships. And sometimes having a neutral third party involved can really help smooth things over. Now, let's revisit a concept we've touched on a few times already, economic outpatient care, or EOC. The book really digs deep into the potential downsides of these financial gifts from parents to adult children and how they can impact both family dynamics and wealth building.
Right. And we've talked about how EOC can have some unintended negative consequences, even though it often comes from a place of love and a desire to help.
Exactly. Even with the best intentions, it can sometimes create a cycle of dependence that actually makes it harder for those adult children to become truly financially independent.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
It is. The book highlights how EOC can sometimes foster a sense of entitlement in those adult children, leading them to overspend and make financial choices that they wouldn't make if they were solely relying on their own income.
It's almost like they're living in this protected bubble, shielded from the realities of managing their own money.
Precisely. And that can create a disconnect between their perceived wealth and their actual financial situation, which can really set them up for difficulties down the road.
It's a powerful reminder that true financial independence comes from earning your own way and making responsible choices with your money, no matter what your family's financial background might be.
Absolutely. And it's something that parents really need to consider. The book encourages parents to think about those long-term implications and find ways to support their children's financial independence rather than fostering dependence.
So it's not about just handing out money, but about teaching those valuable skills and giving them the confidence to manage their own finances.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to create their own success stories. Now, let's delve into the psychological side of this a little bit. The book talks about how receiving those regular financial gifts can actually distort people's perception of their own wealth.
I find that fascinating. Wouldn't you think that getting regular financial help from your parents would make you more aware of your own financial limitations?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But the book suggests that sometimes it has the opposite effect. People who are receiving those consistent gifts might start to view their parents' wealth as an extension of their own.
So it's like they're living in a fantasy world where money is always available, even if it's not really theirs to spend.
Exactly. And that can be incredibly dangerous when it comes to building genuine financial security. It creates a false sense of confidence that can lead to poor financial decisions.
So what's the takeaway for listeners who might be in this situation, either as the giver or the receiver of those financial gifts?
The key takeaway is to be mindful of those potential pitfalls. Strive for genuine financial independence, regardless of your family's financial situation. It's about taking control of your own finances and making choices that align with your own financial reality, even if it means having some tough conversations with loved ones.
Now, shifting gears a bit, I want to talk about something that might seem a little off topic, but the book connects it to wealth building, courage. It argues that building wealth often requires courage. What's the link there?
Building wealth often means doing things differently. It might mean challenging conventional wisdom, making decisions that other people don't understand, and sometimes even stepping outside of your comfort zone. It takes courage to embrace uncertainty and make those choices that prioritize long-term financial security over instant gratification.
So it takes guts to be a paw, to be one of those prodigious accumulators of wealth.
Yeah, in a way it does. It takes guts to resist those temptations and to invest for the future, even when things feel uncertain. And it takes guts to pursue your own definition of success, even if it means going against the grain. The book shares a story about a millionaire who used his dog to outsmart some status-obsessed condo owners who were trying to impose all these restrictions on him.
Wait, what? Tell me more about that.
He found a really creative and honestly courageous way to stand up for himself and protect his interests. It's a great example of someone who used their resourcefulness and a bit of out-of-the-box thinking to overcome a challenge.
I love that story. It reminds us that building wealth isn't always about following the rules or doing things the right way. Sometimes it's about being creative and finding solutions that work for you.
Exactly. And it highlights the importance of being willing to challenge the status quo and fight for what you believe in, especially when it comes to your financial well-being.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into The Millionaire Next Door, I think it's important to reiterate that this book isn't just about becoming a millionaire. It's about so much more than that.
It really is.
It's about understanding the mindset, the habits, and the choices that lead to financial success and ultimately to a life of greater freedom and fulfillment.
Absolutely.
It's about taking control of your finances, building a life that aligns with your values, and having the courage to pursue your dreams, whatever those dreams may be.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining me on this deep dive into The Millionaire Next Door. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners have found it as insightful and inspiring as I have.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember, building wealth is a journey, not a destination. It's about taking small steps every day, making conscious choices, and never giving up on your goals.
And don't forget, the most important wealth we can build is the wealth of knowledge, experience, and relationships.
Beautifully said. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.